Okay, I still see a couple people kind of coming in, so we'll start slowly. That way nobody misses any information. But thank you everybody for coming to the session. I don't know if this is anybody's first family cafe, but I'm sure you guys are either used to getting information overload at times like these, or it's your first time getting bombarded by this much information and just everything all at once. To that point, our session does have a lot of information to cover. So we are going to kind of jump all over the place a little bit, but the overall theme is going to be retirement and special needs planning, right? So I couple those two things together because they end up being the two most important topics. Special needs planning in the sense of all of the benefits and resources and nuances that you guys look through to try to figure out how to take care of your loved ones, and God forbid something ever happens, how do you make sure that care proceeds, right? And then the retirement aspect of it, which unfortunately is a very tough conversation for many people in the sense that you're planning what we call the double retirement. Right? We're looking at not just making sure you have the comfort to retire, but when you pass it, hopefully we're 95 years old, we have enough funds to go into a trust to continue funding the retirement needs of our child, right? And so we're really going to try to cover both and a whole bunch of topics in between, so legal stuff and all sorts. And I will start with, I'm Craig Eppy. My father actually started us in this space about 32 years ago now. It was 1993 when special needs trusts became a legal instrument in the law. Before that, the only way you could do planning was essentially a means of planning that left all of your assets to the government at the end. Not very great, right? So my father is the one that actually helped us get into this space, and 33 years later, we've become experts at helping people really navigate all this information and how to create a plan for yourself. We have been in the space for a long time, so there's all sorts of events and families we've been a part of. This is actually Danny, who started us in this journey. His mother came to my father after he sold her life insurance and said, "You're going to help me figure out special needs planning." And he had no idea what he was doing, but he started to figure it out with her. And we ended up figuring out about the $2,000 rule with benefits that we're going to cover and some of these nuances of how do you actually make sure that everything comes together. And so Danny was how we got started. And for years we've been involved in this space. So we've done stuff with, from South Florida. So all of our stuff is mostly like South Florida local charities, but we're always involved in this space. And like I said, we're going to cover a lot of topics today, right? So this is just a little bit of an overview for it, so we'll start to go through it, but I want to make it as interactive as possible. So any questions you guys have, if you want to raise your hand or, don't get too crazy with the interruptions, but if you want to interrupt me and make sure to get your question answered, please. I definitely want to make this interactive as we go, and then we'll stick around at the end to answer questions if you didn't feel comfortable, if you didn't get it answered. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the legal aspect of things, right? And this is what controls the whole picture. It is not the things you care about most, but it is the documents we need at the top to control it all, right? And so most people may have heard of a durable power of attorney, a healthcare surrogate, some of these more basic documents, and they're recommended that you have them, right? And this is all part of a comprehensive plan. You're not just building a plan for your child, you're building a plan for yourself, right? And if you don't have a trust in place, sometimes people will use these as what I would refer to as a Band-Aid to the situation to help give a little bit more control than you have, because your child at 18 is an adult, just like every other adult in this country. And so these documents can give you control, not really full control, but ability to speak on behalf of them if you're in those situations. So you go to the hospital and something happens, they're 18, they don't have to listen to you. If your child is an adult, they're legally not supposed to. Now, they might, but it's not something we want to risk. It's better to have these things in place so that you don't have to worry when those things are happening. And the last thing on here is a letter of intent. Has anyone ever heard of a letter of intent in the special needs space? Not just a regular legal letter of intent? So only a couple people, which is good to at least hear a couple people have. A letter of intent is very much a life plan, right? So the trust in the legal work is just that. It's legal work. It says, here's the house, here's the money, protect the benefits, right? It stays very generic in many ways. versus what do you do every day for your child? What's their schedule? What's their social media login? Do they hate apples and love oranges? It's a life plan, right? So every client that works with us, we provide a comprehensive life plan that they can basically just fill in the blanks. But everyone, whether they're working with us or not, should have a life plan to couple with their legal documents. Because that's where I find parents' peace of mind really resides, is in that life plan. Because that's all the things that mom or dad do every day, okay? As far as the trusts go, we're looking for what's called a third-party special needs trust. And this is a very used term. So you may have heard third-party special needs trust or special needs trust. And ultimately what they are is an irrevocable trust, right? It is a trust that is unchangeable, meaning when you set that language in place and something happens to you, no one can come in and change the game plan on you. You can put in the trust certain things that can be subject to change, like you can buy and sell a house if the neighborhood isn't as good as it used to be, right? But as far as life plan and what you really want to be protected in those documents, unchangeable, so that you know nothing can happen. While we're alive, these documents will be revocable generally, right? And that's where they're going to be changeable so that you can have what you want, but 5 years later, life has changed. You can edit those documents while you still want to, right? And either way, in this space, we're looking at a third-party special needs trust versus a typical first-party special needs trust. A first-party special needs trust is called a D4A Medicaid Reimbursement Trust. It literally goes 100% to the government after they pass. So if there's money left over, it's not going to a sibling or a charity or anywhere you want, all going to the government. Third-party trust, you get to say where the benefits go. So you can give it to another sibling, a charity, wherever you wanted it to go so that you know that these dollars aren't just disappearing, right? So that's generally what most people are going to do, unless they had something like a car accident where the assets were the individuals themselves. Then it has to go into a first-party trust because it is not somebody else's money, it's their money, okay? Any questions on that part? I know that can be a little technical. Question, yes?
So I just have a question that's going to be for, I'm already taking a lot in, but do you offer like a 15-minute like phone call or anything like that to just kind of dive deep into?
Yes, after this, all the forms that everybody's handing out, if you submit them, Coley in my office is going to reach out to make sure we do really a 30-minute consultation. It's never 15 minutes really, where we're going to answer some questions on what we're talking about today. Of course, more specific to anyone's particular situation, and then we'll go over any other additional things that are needed.
It seems pretty simple what you've covered so far, but yesterday I sat in one or two similar, and it's very still. I'm like, okay, house. Okay, then I have retirement. Then I have what if I pass? So there's a lot of,
So you're pointing on a very good topic, which is you need a quarterback. So later in my presentation, I'm going to get to that portion of it because that is needed. It is the thing that makes things happen, unfortunately, versus, to your point, you can understand a note. What are we going to do with it? How are we executing it and making sure that a year later it wasn't still just a note in our head, right? So some big things we want to talk about with these trusts, though. And this is where the planning aspect comes a little bit in. So this is the first financial part, if you will. The trusts have immense issues to work around. First, taxation. They are taxed at the highest rate of the day. So if taxes go up to 50% in the state, then that's the rate it pays. It doesn't matter that it's only distributing 30 grand of income, and generally someone making 30 grand wouldn't ever see a tax rate like that. These trusts are taxed at the highest rate of the day because the wealthy use these trusts to shield their assets. So the government came back and said, well, but we're going to tax you on it, right? And they're the same trust. There's no difference between a third-party special needs trust and a general irrevocable trust, minus the difference of the special needs language. But the format of it, as far as taxation and the way the assets are handled, identical, right? So that's the first thing. Second is trust operations, administration cost, right? While you're alive, you are the trust. You help make sure everything happens, you pay for things, you facilitate things, you are the trust while you're alive. When you're not here, someone has to operate that trust, right? So generally you either end up with a trust company that's going to charge you a fee to do it, or you might hire individual services, and either way you're looking at a cost on the trust. cost that you're not incurring today while you are providing all that care. So that's an additional cost. Question?
Can you designate somebody else in the family?
Of course. Those are going to be called your trustees and your guardians, right? So inside these legal documents, you're going to have a guardian over the person, which is who we want to be the most, empathetic type person, right? The caregiver type personality. And you're going to have a trustee. We want them to be a different person because the trustee generally not the same skill set. And we want someone that we can trust with finances and that can be a safeguard, right? Guardian says, oh, I wanted a hot tub for the individual. And they're like, they don't want a hot tub. I'm not approving that expense, right? And so that's where the trustee can be there to help protect the funds because guardians get greedy when they're stuck in that situation. They're living in a situation day by day. You guys as parents can understand that immensely, but that's where we want to really protect against it, right? A corporate trustee by law protects against it, right? They have a fiduciary or legal responsibility to protect the trust in the individual, and they will not be the guardian, so they would either hire a guardian as care or someone else in the family might have been appointed. Okay? But that cost comes in, and it's not cost you're covering today. So when you're thinking about how much money do I need per month for my child, it's not normally considered. So we want to make sure it's not missed.
The taxation, if I leave a life insurance policy after I die,
The policy goes in tax-free, right? $1 million. $1 million goes into the policy. But then the $1 million gets invested, and we create a rate of return. And we take income out of that trust. That income is going to get taxed. The $1 million, tax-free, but the growth on the $1 million pays tax. Great question. And then funding, right? So to his point on life insurance, what are the funding options and what's going to be the most efficient inside the trust, right? We have certain rules, which there's some nuance with special needs, but there are new rules on retirement accounts where if you leave it to a non-spouse, you have to spend it in 10 years. There's some ways around that inside the special needs planning of things, but that's where we need to understand what assets we're putting in and what their taxation exposure is, right? There are some unique tips and tricks that we can use in certain plans depending on if someone's assets can support it, if we can design those types of particular assets in. But ultimately, we're going to deal with tax, so we just want to be looking at it and understanding. If we can afford the tax, great, right? If there's enough in there that the tax can be paid and benefits are good, great, but we want to look at that ahead of time. We don't want to think $1 million covers everything when maybe we needed $1.5 million to really do that, okay? And so we talked a tiny bit about this, right? But we want to make sure guardianship is also done. That's the other side of the legal conversation. Guardianship in Florida, we're generally looking at guardian advocacy, okay? Everyone's heard potentially of guardian advocacy. They've heard the phrase maybe thrown out at them, but what is it, right? Guardianship is the process of taking control over someone that's over 18. So the easiest place to start is with an elderly parent that might have dementia or Alzheimer's, and you have to take care of them. Those guardianship processes are called an incapacitation hearing with attorneys. You're going to spend probably close to 10 grand for those guardianships. Guardian advocacy, you don't even need an attorney to do it in the court of law. I recommend one, but it's not required. You're generally going to be in the $3,000-ish range of fees versus $10,000 to do it. The biggest difference is that full guardianship is going to take away all their rights. Right to vote, right to marry, right to do all sorts of things that you're not trying to take away. Guardian advocacy gives you control specifically over life, health, and financial decisions, right? Leaving them with all their rights. And that way you really have protection. The biggest protection in it is true control over their health, right? When you go to the hospital, they're not in control as an adult, you are, right? And then the bigger part on the financial side is it's going to protect you financially. We've had many a client who got a credit card or something that was not supposed to be in their name, and they rung up a bill. Guardian advocacy has financial protection in it to truly make sure that you can erase the bill. Right? We had a client that had the Apple store get unlocked for their daughter. One day, $7,000 of charges. They sent in their advocacy documents. Apple undid all the charges. Right? So it's financial protection. Question.
So for that in itself, in this huge array of vendors and affiliates and everyone that's here, who is the right person to say, I would about that, about the advocacy.
Who's the right parent? Like, what's the type of? So you're looking for an attorney, right? So it's either going to be a guardianship elder law attorney, or it's going to be a special needs attorney, right? On the trust side, you have estate planning, and then on the guardianship side, you have elder law. So you'll find estate and elder law attorneys that'll do this work, or you'll find a specific special needs attorney. We actually, the presenter before us that we just connected with, that's what her firm does, is those kinds of things, special to special needs, versus they don't handle elder law cases. Even though guardianship falls in that realm, they're like, no, we're just handling special needs. So there is specialized attorneys for that, so either guardianship or special needs. Okay. Little bit of a pivot, but now to the financial part, which is a big one that I know a lot of people have seen stuff about, which is ABLE accounts, right? The reason we're doing this planning, the reason the trust exists in all of it, is to protect the benefits, right? The benefits that are due, SSI, Medicaid, and Med Waiver, which we'll get to a little bit later, all have qualifications. And the Medicaid and SSI specifically have a $2,000 limit, meaning you have $2,000 in a bank account or income over a certain amount, disqualified from the benefit, right? And so you have to make sure that things remain out of your child's name, right? And a ABLE account is something that expands that $2,000 rule. I think we should have a slide on it. There we go. Expands that $2,000 rule to $100,000, right? So now in that account, you could have up to $100,000 without that disqualification happening, right? Still a limit, 100, but at least it's a much broader limit, right? Now, not designed for comprehensive planning, right? If someone had only $50,000 to leave, maybe I would recommend them put it in an ABLE account. But if we're leaving $250,000, $500,000, any amount of dollars, we need to do proper planning. The ABLE account can be used like their bank account, right? But without the issue of the disqualification. There are limits to it, so we can only fund in $19,000 a year. It goes up every year, but this year $19,000, and there is a technical limit, $418, that can be in the account, but we're never going to let a client get over 100. So I'm not really worried about that $418 because I just don't think it's truly realistic, but that does technically exist. These accounts function like a 529 account. So anyone familiar with college planning, you can invest in a retirement-like account that's designed for education, right? These are like that, except not restricted to education. We can use them for almost anything. There's a pretty broad list, but they're going to grow tax-free, come out tax-free, right? So you get that extra benefit by putting dollars in there, and that's where it's smart to use them, but for every person, a little different for how much they should use it. And then we were talking about the benefits before, right? So those benefits, again, SSI, Medicaid, Medicare. When you go on Social Security, if your child is not receiving Medicare or SSDI yet, they will start to receive that when you go on Social Security. As a dependent of you, that's where they're going to qualify for that. So those benefits end up coming in, and there's limits to them. If they make over a certain amount, they'll get disqualified. Easier to disqualify for SSI, harder to disqualify for Medicaid, but both are not very high watermarks, right? If they get a job, a real full-time job, they're going to disqualify themselves for benefits, right? So you have to look at what are those benefits providing and what is this job opportunity and how do we look at it? I've had people knowingly disqualify benefits because it made sense to, right? But that's where you just want to understand those limits so that you're not breaking them without knowing. And then the last part of it, Med Waiver, is the most unknown benefit. This one is not financially qualified, so it's not based off income like the other two, right? But it is signed up for separately. So has anyone ever heard of assistance for persons with disabilities? Okay.
I have it, and I still don't know
So
much about it.
great.
I've had it for years.
Great question, point. Let me elaborate. So Med Waiver is a very different system. You gotta get on the waiting list, right? So many people are not on benefit, they're on the waiting list. You're gonna get a number 1 through 7. So you're like, oh, they told me my child's a 6. That means I'm towards the bottom of the waiting list, right? I have less emergency factors qualifying me for benefit. these benefits are going to pay for the ancillary things that are not covered by the other benefits. So therapy, summer camp, all these other ancillary things that can be expensive, but are not covered by health insurance, right? You're generally going to see it's either an emergency situation or when your child moves out of your home that the benefit gets approved, right? Because they need to have the circumstances that qualify them. If you're in the home and you clean their room, well, then they don't need someone to come and help clean them up. Or if you cook their meals, they don't need someone to help cook their meals. And so it's truly based on legitimate qualification, which absolutely makes it the toughest. And that's where generally it's going to be after 18 or 26 that we'll see these kicked on, depending on the situation. Question, yeah.
So under the CDC Plus.
CDC Plus, great question, is part of MedWaiver. That is for you as the parent to become the coordinator. So instead of having a support coordinator that helps you, you can be the coordinator and they will direct the funds right to you. Don't have to wait for approval on what to pay for. You allocate the funds directly, and then you just have to report where you spent it, but you're not waiting for approvals, and you can control it much more. I don't recommend it for everyone. That is a little bit of a job and a skill set, so it's not a great thing for every person to look at CDC Plus. Yes.
And you still have to apply for reimbursement for certain things.
They do make you apply for reimbursement.
For some things, yeah.
Okay.
You either have to already have it on your spending plan, or you have to submit we could submit a request for reimbursement for our expenses for the hotel for cafe.
Right.
But you have to do it and get it approved ahead of time. You
Right.
can't afterwards do it. So
Perfect.
there's some nuances.
Yeah. So what she said was perfect, right? You want to understand those nuances because it's not a support coordinator doing everything, right? Versus one that truly, well, you tell them what you need and they're going to help you figure out if you get covered and make sure funds get paid.
Can I do a random act of kindness and share what it took me years coming to this conference, finally pull out of Social Security?
Sure.
The way somebody's looking and probably saying, how could their income ever be $2,300? And it's like, excuse me, sorry, a disabled adult child could draw that much. And as long as they've never been married and was diagnosed before 18, I believe.
26, yes.
That they could receive up to that amount every month through Social Security and through SSI and Medicare and keep Medicaid.
Correct.
Used to, you always knew, as long as they get $1 in SSI, they keep their Medicaid. Well, if they're a disabled adult child, they meet that criteria, they can draw it.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions on MedWaiver?
I'm just confused because, my daughter's on med waiver, but I always thought that they couldn't have $2,000 going.
That's a standing asset versus income, right? Income, what's coming in every month, versus what's just sitting in the bank account, right? $2,000 is the limit on the sitting assets, okay? Versus these are income limits, right?
As long as you spend that.
As long as you spend it. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so like I said, you can spend these ABLE accounts on like anything, right? There's so much you can spend on. If it's not being covered, most is not being covered. So it's a pretty broad thing. There technically are limitations to it. If you go on ABLE United website, they have a whole comprehensive list there as well. Okay, let's talk about a switch over to your guys' side of the coin in planning, right? Any assets you guys have when we do this type of planning need to be reviewed. Everything you can imagine has a beneficiary arrangement. If you haven't looked at it, you need to. Because if you haven't, there is a good chance if it's not been listed properly, it's going to just go to your estate. If it goes to your estate, that's going to probate. If it goes to probate, they're going to force it to your heirs. So let's say you have 2 kids and one has a disability and one does not. They're still forcing those assets 50-50 to both kids. If they force a disqualification, they will force a disqualification. So you want to make sure we've looked at these things so that we know that it's going somewhere. If you don't have a special needs trust set up, my recommendation as a Band-Aid is, hey, let's put 100% of the beneficiary in the other sibling's name for now, right? Something that at least gives you the time to do the planning, to know that while that's going on, if something happens, the worst possible things can't unfold, okay? But there's all sorts of things that you want to look at, and even something like collectibles, right? If you've got a piece of art worth $100,000, it belongs to someone when you pass, right? And so you just want to be careful with all things.
It said property, so.
Yes, real property, yes.
Do we want that to be in the name of the special needs trust?
If we want it to go to that individual, so let's talk about the two sides of property. You're either going to have a house they live in, yes, 100% we want it in the trust. Or if you wanted them to use real estate as an asset for income, then we need that real estate in the trust, right? So that the real estate's income is due to the trust, which the trust then has the rules to use that income for their benefit, okay?
I thought they were allowed to own it.
They can, but there's limitations. If they own a house in their name, they can never sell the house. Because the moment they sell the house, there's a financial transaction, and then they get disqualified. But while they owned it, like they inherited the house and they never moved, then that's okay. But the moment we need to buy or sell a house, it's going to cause a problem, so it can't be in their name. The trust can own the house, yes. Yep. Was there a question in the back?
I do. What if you have typical children? I kind of just walked in, sorry. So if you have typical children, you have special needs children, we have a trust all set up for him. If you have a house, but you don't want him necessarily to live in it, so I don't put the house necessarily in the trust for my special needs child, I could just leave it to my other kids?
Absolutely, you could. And again, it's a matter of what you're trying to happen. If you're like, I want the three of them to split the income on the house, right? The income's $5,000 on the house, and I want them each to take about $1,500 a month of income for their own benefit. Then you would just have to make sure with the attorney that that's designed properly on a split of ownership, right? That a portion of that house is owned under trust, and the other portion is owned by them directly. But that's where you would have separate, like you're going to have potentially a trust for each child, right? And so you might have that asset owned by all three trusts with rules of how to manage, right? And those are things that the attorney would set up with you for that transaction and for that asset. But it's really just a matter of what you want. All of it is really possible.
Okay, why would I want trusts for them? They're typical, they're going to college.
You might not, and that's where, again, like you would set it up with the attorney. Correct.
So what if I wanted to sell the house, like we passed or whatever, and my sons get it, they're gonna sell the house, but they wanna give their brother some money?
It's got to be through the
They
trust.
would just put it in the trust.
Yep, it's got to be through the trust. And others can make gifts to the trust, right? So it's not restricted that only the person that created the trust can gift to the trust. But it would have to all go through the trust, or it's going to cause disqualification.
Right, so the trust can have as much money in it as it needs.
It can be a billionaire if it wants to be.
But it would just be, then where does the gray area, like as far as, I understand.
The trust pays for things, it doesn't go to your son. So instead of your son paying an electric bill, the trust paid the electric bill directly. So now it was never in his name. He still got the benefit of all the electricity, he just didn't have to have the bill in his name.
And he can still have an ABLE account,
Yep.
right, which doesn't have anything.
And the trust can put money in the ABLE account. Say, oh, the ABLE account's empty. Put $1,000 in the ABLE account for him to spend. Yep.
But that doesn't count as income to the person?
Nope.
Question.
Yes.
So you were saying with the, so I understand this, I leave the house to my son, special needs trust. For whatever reason, he's gonna move, his sister moves somewhere else, she's typical. He wants to live, but now the house is gonna be vacant, the trust sells the house, that becomes income to
The trust sells the house, the asset, the payoff of the house. So it's not, exactly income per se, because if the house was $500,000 and you sold it for $500,000, it was just a transfer. But that income flow, that asset flow of $500 is going to go directly into a trust bank account, and then the trust can go ahead and buy another property or do whatever it wants with the asset.
Okay, so it won't ruin it for them
No.
having to sell the house, it doesn't
Nope.
disrupt the trust?
Not at all. That's what the trust is there to do.
Sorry, like we sold a house recently, right, and because we in North Carolina, because we've been there, it'd been our primary residence, we didn't have to pay, like capital gains.
Yeah, you get $250 per person.
So now, right, so like, if that money were to go into the trust, it didn't have to pay capital gains taxes, but does it pay, like, I don't
Oh, is it going to pay taxes going to them?
Like, is the
No,
trust
you're
gonna
going to
hold
do,
that money?
every person is allowed to have, right now, just about 13 million per person exempt from taxes when you die. So when you do this proper planning, if we're talking about $1 million house, that's only $500,000 of each you and your husband's exemption, right? So it's all inside the planning, but as long as we're under 26 million per married couple, we're not going to worry about taxes on that transfer. Okay. Everything above that, then we get into estate tax issues. Question?
You missed the beginning. Who draw the trust account? The lawyer?
A lawyer would start that account, correct. And we work as the quarterback. So this goes back to your question right in the beginning, where how do we manage all this stuff? This is where my specialty was created, right? Is helping people manage this picture, because you're not going to remember everything I said today. You might understand it, but you're not going to remember it. And so not only who helps you make sure to get back to the place where you were, but who makes sure that it gets executed. So if you've been thinking about this planning for more than a year and you haven't got as far as you want to, the question is, if you weren't getting as far as you wanted in the gym, would you hire a trainer, right? And so we become the quarterback to the team or the trainer in the gym, and we are going to help make sure that this plan gets executed. Every client that works with us is a minimum of a 1-year engagement, because it takes the better part of 1 to 3 months to build out a plan and really help someone. And then it takes time to help them actually make sure that they filled out the letter of intent and they went to the attorney and got the trust done, and all these pieces get done. And then where do they get organized?
So in the previous slide, it said something about inheritance. So
Yes.
I've heard this in many little talks. So I have a mom who's my special needs son's grandma.
Yes.
So they're like, be careful if grandma dies and leaves money and
Correct.
doesn't leave it in the right place, it can hurt.
It's got to go to your trust.
Right, so how do I tell grandma where she needs to put the money? So you're saying I've got to
Does she speak English?
She does, well.
Then you tell her in English.
Oh, no. She speaks very little English, but she's very stubborn, so she doesn't like to take direction. First of all, she's like, I'm not gonna die. Newsflash, everyone's gonna die. But when I try to bring it up, she gets very, in her ways. So I just wanna be able to direct her and say, this is a professional person's advice. If you're going to leave money to your grandchild.
You can absolutely direct them to the professional if that's what's needed. From a basic conversation standpoint, I'm learning a lot about the planning that ultimately disqualifies, what's your child's name? Casey. That disqualifies Casey's benefits. His benefits pay him thousands of dollars a month. And if anything disqualifies it, all of that goes away, and we have to figure out how to pay for it for the rest of his life. So unless you're going to leave him $2+ million, right, where we know that there's no possible way that he's going to need any more money, then I need to know that what you're doing doesn't take away all the things that I've spent the last decade figuring out for him.
So she would leave it to a trust.
She would leave it to a trust he's the beneficiary. It's all like you can sit with her and she can do it for, like, she wants to make sure that he gets a water slide. Okay, great, put in the trust. Grandma's money's got to buy a water slide for the pool. Like, it can be whatever she wants. It has to go to that trust.
After the passing of a loved one that has the trust, where does that money? Is it then designated to a sibling?
Yeah, wherever you say. So you could say siblings, charities, cousins, it doesn't matter. Everywhere but the government.
Okay, are there tax compliance at that time, or how to?
Are there, sorry, I didn't hear.
So it goes to his sister. What is the tax implication of the trust being?
Well, so those are going to be taxed. Those are going to be passed tax-free, right?
Okay.
Because you're talking about the estate transfer, and that's where, again, you get into the taxation rules on estate transfer and limits, and certainly the trust won't have exceeded its limit.
And going back to grandma, if grandma doesn't change it and it comes and it gets delivered to the individual,
There's a potential 5-year look back on the benefits. So they're going to come in and say, oh, they've got this pile of $100,000. They got to spend the $100,000. Then they can start the clock on the count back.
well, my question is, can you put that now in a first-party trust and still keep your benefits?
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
Because you didn't plan for it, or you didn't know that.
I don't think that will protect, because it still was exposed into their name. But that might be, I'm going to have my associate take a note, and we'll make sure we connect and we can get you that answer. Because I have not had that question asked to me, so that's a really good question.
Relative, you forgot about them.
No, 100%. The first party trust, it's their money. So what you're saying logically makes sense that way. I just got to see that once it was in their name, I'm pretty sure the disqualification will happen, but I can double check that for you. If money ends up in their name individually, can you then turn around and put it in a first party trust for them? And it's their money, so yes, you could. Will it keep their benefits? That's going to be the dicey part that they'll probably still start the look back period.
Could you have a clause in the special needs trust that says, in the event this happens, this will happen?
No. But back to my point on quarterback, we operate as the quarterback for all of these things, right? So what you're going to find is that there's tax questions, legal questions, special needs, more benefit-specific questions, financial questions, and generally people don't know who's supposed to answer what and what's it going to cost you, right? We do our fees as an annual fee with no hourly cost because we don't want people to ever have that thought. We want you to know that if you've hired a service we're working with for the year, it's the gym. Show up at the gym, the trainer's there, we're going to help you get to your result, right? So whether I have the answer, like many of the questions, or something like this where it's like, hey, let me go just do a little homework and get that answer, we're going to help you get to the right answer or the right resource that helps with it, like the guardianship attorneys or whichever resource is needed. Okay? And that's where our role really comes in, minus all the financial expertise of looking at your, estate over time, and are you on track for retirement, and what happens if there's an emergency and we need, a $20,000 roof to be repaired, or, all these kinds of things. We're going to do the financial expertise and all of that financial planning, look at insurance policies, retirement accounts. It is the deepest dive you can possibly go through. But we're going to couple it with all these other things to make sure that the entire plan comes together.
So if I'm getting ready to walk into a divorce and we're getting the settlement, should I contact you before that happens?
Yes, I mean, there's not a million things that can be done, but the first thing we would do is just a review of the assets to figure out what's titled, how, and what's going on. Ultimately, Florida is a 50-50 state, and so it's not like there's going to be a lot to do, but we can certainly help you start to strategize around it. That way, if you needed to ask for a little extra in the divorce for what you know, you can give justification, right? Attorneys generally are supposed to finish that divorce saying, we've got you what you need. In a lawsuit, it's, we got you this settlement. The settlement's going to take care of you for the rest of your life, right? And so having that information of, okay, what takes care of me for the rest of my life? It's not a $5 million pile of money. It's how much income does that $5 million pile produce, and how long does it last with ups and downs? Like the market right now is down 700 points yesterday, right? How do I know that when I still need my income, I don't have to worry about that down for that day when I need my income every month, right? So having that understanding can be helpful in the process, but it's not like we're going to change what the attorney ultimately helps you agree to with your ex and those kinds of things. But we will put all the financial justification around what's needed and what needs to be prepared for.
Okay.
So there's, personal preference in
Because
there.
we're looking at, lifetime care for a dependent, so.
Correct. So to that point,
Kind of critical.
we can quantify it. If you're like, he's supposed to be responsible for lifetime care, we can quantify those things, exactly, right? Because what is lifetime care is never defined. You see these lawsuits where someone had some big critical injury and they're like, oh, we got you this settlement. Well, if someone puts it with Bernie Madoff, that money's gone, and now how's their care doing, right? So really understanding how these things are going to play out. Taxes, inflation, all the parameters, that really happen in the world and happen faster now. We're seeing these market issues, once a year or two now. So I don't think that's going to just necessarily change.
You mentioned it's kind of an annual
Yes.
commitment with you. What's the range of cost and how is that?
That's a great question. So our fees start at $3,000 and go on up for the annual engagement. We do offer a discount. So everyone that comes to a presentation like this for us, we offer a $500 discount. But that is like I said, an annual cost. So at a minimum, in this case of $2,500 is the annual cost. And with that, we're going to build out the financial plan, build out the special needs plan, help you with all of these pieces and organizing it. And then we use a software that we actually provide to our clients so that they can have a place that all this stuff stays organized. Where do you save all your documents? Where does all the financial data evolve so that what we looked at 5 years ago updates so that we know what we're looking at today? We use a very protected and robust software that our clients get their own access to so that they can have a place to truly organize their special needs plan and know that something happens, someone could log into a computer from anywhere and access the plan that's needed. Question?
Sorry, this might be an able question, but it just came to me somehow in one of the conversations. If you don't have SSI, SSDI, I don't have any benefits like that for my child, but if I wanted to take some money of like my personal pay, can I use that able account? Like if I wanted to transfer every paycheck a certain amount into that able account?
Yes, you can. I think that it definitely plays on more of a large, planning conversation where you want to figure out, is that the right financial move? Meaning, if I'm putting $100 a month over here, would it be better if I put it over here? And let's evaluate the differences, right? The proof is in the pudding. The results are easy to see, right? In the sense of, how is this going to work in my life, right? Like, if we put $100 a month into an investment account, it's going to grow slowly. If we put $100 a month into life insurance and something happens, we're going to get a big death benefit right away, much more than the return of an investment account, right? So truly, we just have to evaluate what actually helps you solve the biggest concerns and gets you to the goal. But absolutely, you could do that if that became the best solution. And what are we trying to do here? We're ultimately trying to make sure the trust, oh, was there a question there?
Yeah, let me ask a question. You don't participate in the legal shield.
The Legal Shield program? No. No. We're not the attorney, though. We're the financial advisor. Yeah. So we would recommend our clients, if our clients has Legal Shield, maybe we start using that for the trust work first, and depending on what it will offer. And that's where I just have my clients ask each time. I've had clients where their program could handle a special needs trust, and ones where they're like, no, we'll do a basic trust, but we won't do a special needs, and then we need a hired special service. Yes. No, we will charge, we'll split the fees up into payments if it's needed. And what we're trying to cover with all of this, right, we're trying to protect the benefits, right, make sure none of them are ever disqualified, and then leave as much money as possible to cover everything else, right? And so you basically have the breakdown of what is my benefits supposed to cover versus what's never going to be covered. Now, will my benefits cover all of this? No, it might not even cover all the room and board depending on what type of living situation we're looking at, right? And that's where with a trust, we generally recommend that we're having our clients get somewhere between $250,000 to upwards of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million in their trust, depending on what they want to do. If someone's going into a group home and they had $250,000 in their trust, they can produce, maybe $1,000 a month for ancillary things and help to make sure that that looks like a much happier situation. Versus if we're looking at private care in the home, we need probably easily $1 million to $1.5 million in a trust to be able to always support all that cost, right? So you want to understand, what are we trying to pay for? What covers what? And where is going to be the responsibility, okay? And then we've been talking about this a bunch already, but what does it look like to meet with us, right? So we are happy to meet with anybody for a free consultation. We've already gone over our fees. So yes, there are fees if we want to engage. Like I said, that's a minimum of a year engagement where we're going to make sure that these things are getting done. I'm going to give you a chance to fail a homework assignment, and then we come back and say, wait a second, why wasn't this done and what's going on? And let's actually work on how we facilitate a result for you. Everybody's different, so every plan's got to be a little customized into how it works. And ultimately, there are a lot of services we cover. So it's not just financial planning. We have life insurance, wealth management, all sorts of things. For me, it's more about the planning and making sure you guys are getting what you need. But as we get into your picture, if there's other services that are needed, certainly we cover other services. And what do we got to do? We got to take the time to understand what this information means for us, right? What do we want for our plan? And then we can meet with advisors and make sure that we're making good decisions. And I'm happy to help people through that process in the sense of helping to facilitate good conversation, of helping you think through the what ifs and how do I figure out what I'm worried about. Question, yeah.
So, just to recap, you said you were basically the quarterback. So
Yes.
in the last slide, you said, like you said, if you need a special needs trust, you would recommend, or you would say you need to go to an attorney and see what you need
So
to do.
we have a lot of services in our office. So if someone already has legal documents, we will have them completely reviewed with comprehensive notes of like, listen, here's the trust you already had, and here's some of the issues we found in it that needs to be corrected. But if you need new documents created, then yes, we're going to recommend the legal service if it's needed. If you have an attorney, we'll of course work with them, but if not, then we'll recommend if needed.
Okay, because I saw the last thing, also you had a couple of things, life insurance and all that.
Yep.
You have agents like that, or you recommend?
No, we are. I'm a fully licensed, so we sell all of those products. Our practice started 33 years ago with life insurance and annuities. My father was very particular on asset protection, so he was not worried about how to grow someone's wealth the biggest, but how to protect wealth once it got there. And so we started our practice in insurance and annuities and grew wealth management and planning from there. Yes. Do you know what attorney did them? They have a copy. They have to have copies on file. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, sir. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I'm just gonna say.
I get lots of
I don't
ridiculous
know
questions.
If anybody else would ever say it. Like, is there a minimum to get started? So I'm kind of transitioning into a new season myself, personally and professionally. So I'm starting a new job.
A minimum of what to get started?
Minimum money to get a financial plan. Like,
Well, yeah, ours is going to start a minimum of $2,500.
no, not how much we pay you. I'm saying how much to like.
Oh,
actually
what should your
start
picture look like?
Yeah, because some people are like, I have financial advisor friends that are like, oh, my preferred referral starts at 500,000. I'm like, okay, well, I'm
So
not.
we start at $500,000 for wealth management. We waive our minimum requirement when someone's a planning client. So if someone's paid me a fee for their planning, I'm a fiduciary, and in that plan, I'm going to make recommendations for a retirement account. If I made that recommendation for the retirement account, I'm not sending you elsewhere to do it. I'm going to open that account, even if it's with $5,000, right? We're going to waive those minimums on the planning side. Yeah. So we're absolutely a firm like that in that sense that we have asset, requirements, but from a planning perspective, we have no requirement. Our requirement is that you are engaged in the planning and you are there for our calls so that we can help you get somewhere, and then we'll see what the results are.
If you know someone has set up a special needs trust for your child, but they don't really wanna, they're just like, all you need to know is it's set up, so you know nothing about it. Is it wiser to start your own, or if you have assets?
If they're not going to let you, into that information, unfortunately, it is wiser to start your own, because how can you guarantee that it's a third-party special needs trust?
Well, they say it is, but.
My dad told me lots of things growing up that didn't come true.
So if you, is there, I don't know, like a limit, could one of our children have 10 special needs?
You're not supposed to have lots of them, but no, like if you were in that predicament, you could have more than one potentially, and ultimately you would be handling those issues with the attorney. Like the attorney that's making yours would help you figure out a little bit of a game plan of like, how do I legally deal with this other trust in existence? If there's no funds in that trust, it's as useless as the paper it was printed on. So that's where it'll really matter on that side. But if you can't verify the information and I don't know, like they can have one trust and everybody can leave it. But if I don't know the information, then I can't use it. And, then I got to do my own just for peace of mind.
If there was a special needs trust like that, then is there a way to know, that the beneficiary go by their social security number, or how would you know if there were multiple, if it's in the trust name? And it just sits there, is it gonna wind up in Treasure Hunt, Florida one day?
Well, I mean, it certainly could, but ultimately you would have, like generally speaking, family, just like she's saying, like I don't know what's in it, but I know they said that there's a trust that was made. Like normally there's something where at least you know where something is so that you have a trail of breadcrumbs that we can use with an attorney to track it down. So it would really be a matter of you knowing something. If you don't know that it's in existence, there's no, asset search where you can just go find anything. Not until it's in the courthouse, literally going to the beneficiaries, are you going to get notice.
So if we appoint you, like we pay you, you do set up the trust? Or
We do not set up the trust. We will review any legal documents that already exist and have them fully reviewed to figure out what you have, what's going on, what's needed or what's not needed. And then we would either recommend to a trust, to an attorney, or we would work with one that you have if you had a preference. With this type of planning, I tend to tell people, you're looking at about $10,000 to $15,000 in total fees when you look at my fee and a trust fee and a guardianship fee and all these different pieces. You're generally somewhere in the $10,000 to $15,000 range before you're said and done between the comprehensive planning.
And then investments, that's wide open, stock market.
We can do anything on the investment side. Like we can put any asset inside the trust. It's more a matter of what makes sense, right? Like if someone's in their 70s and 80s, we're not recommending the most risky assets and just putting it into any stock in the stock market versus maybe something that's got a heavier bond position in it. But ultimately, there is no restriction in assets that go into a trust. None at all. Any other questions? Yep.
If an irrevocable trust is set up and funded to a satisfactory amount for their future support, there's no need to do a special needs trust.
Well, it needs to be a special needs trust. If it's not a special needs trust, then it doesn't have the language that says protect the benefits, meaning the trust may distribute assets to the individual, which will disqualify their benefits. So if it's not a particular third-party special needs trust, then there's going to be potentially an issue. Oh, if it's funded with enough to provide, then the benefits don't matter, right? Like I follow a kid on Instagram. He's an artist. His name is it's like Vicky Art or something is what the page is. He sells an immense amount of art. He's probably making 100 or 200 grand a year. He doesn't need any benefits, right? If you have enough money in a trust that the benefits don't matter, I have clients that have enough wealth that they've got rid of the SSI benefit because they put money, they gave their child income, they protected the Medicaid, but in the sense of like it's only needed for the financial value that it provides. And so if there's enough money in that trust, we don't need these benefits.
That won't keep you from getting Medicaid.
Well, it could, because again, anything over 23, whatever that limit was, about $2,400 in their name of income, they can get a disqualification on Medicaid. Now, once you get to Medicare, right, when you retire and they're on Medicare, that's not going to be disqualified. That's based off of your pay into the system, not just due from a benefit qualification. Okay, so that's where it'll pick up a little bit, but ultimately, yeah, I mean, you could have a disqualification, and it's a matter of do we need to protect that or not?
All right, another reason I have not partnered up with a financial advisor is I don't know enough about where to put my money. So like, I wouldn't know crypto, I wouldn't know to invest this much in stocks or bonds or whatever they are. Like I literally know nothing about that. So how do you?
When we do a financial plan, we are going to start from the very top to the very bottom, meaning I'm going to pull out your income and your expenses and not just say what's your car payment and your mortgage, but what do you spend at the dry cleaner, and do you go to the movies once a week, and what about Starbucks or getting your nails done or anything that exists. We're going through it so that we can really see what's going on so that we know what's your lifestyle, what's going to keep it going in the next 30 years if you needed an asset to produce that, right? Then we can look at what your ability to save is, what's sitting in accounts, and what are they going to do on their own. If you left them and made no change to your assets, will they grow to a place that naturally covers your income needs? Generally not without any planning, but sometimes you could be closer to that mindset than you thought. If you were putting 10 or 15% in your retirement account forever, you might have more than you thought, right? But that's where we're going to start so that we know the baseline. Then from there, we can look at the chessboard. because most people have maybe, let's say, a house and a retirement account. That's the king and the queen on a chessboard. But retirement is the full chessboard. I need the bishops and the pawns and the rooks and all the other pieces on the board to play. And until I know what your board looks like and what I'm playing against, I can't possibly know which assets are going to be suitable. And then when you get into craziness like crypto, you're talking about risk exposure. How much risk are you willing to take? Some people are emotionally not suitable for crypto because they just don't like the ups and downs of the risk, right? She's shaking her head because she knows that's not her, right? And so that's where we're never going to recommend something that you're not suitable for. We do little quizzes on different asset classes where we can actually stress test and say, listen, you could go into this asset, but you answered questions that says you would make a bad decision when X, Y, and Z happens, and here's where X, Y, and Z is going to happen.
So you said your two key players are home and retirement. I'm selling my home in a divorce, and I don't have retirement. I'm in a new job where now I'll have a position to do that. So what happens to a client that wants to work with you that doesn't have the two?
It's the same thing. We still have to build it all out, look at where you're starting. If you don't have a home and we want to buy a home, okay, we got to put that piece on the chessboard. That just means it's part of the plan instead of already accomplished, but it makes no difference in the approach. Yep. No, my pleasure.
He brought up an issue that I found interesting. If you've created a irrevocable trust, and then you realize you need to have a special needs trust, how would you have to let that one die?
I am not 100% sure. The attorney would have to answer that one on how it would legally be unwound, or to your point, like, would it just die off? There may be a way to legally unwind it in the planning, but that I'm not sure. That'd be a legal question. Yeah. Yes.
This is about the able account.
Sure.
Okay, I opened an able account, and I also have a trust.
Okay.
I'm kind of concerned that if I did right, because the trust, protects more the future of my child.
Correct.
But at the end, the able account, what it concerns me a lot, okay, it's tax-free, I know the perks.
Right.
But my only concern is about, he's not on Medicaid, but if he will, okay, I heard that if he's 55 and up and he passed away, Medicaid will go to the able account.
They can take the able account. The able account is like a first-party trust, Medicaid reimbursement, right? So the money that's left in an able account can go back to the government, which is why I said, like, we don't use it as a primary planning vehicle. We use it more like a bank account, right? So maybe there's $1,000 left in there or $5,000, and you're like, all right, the government took something, but like it wasn't a big deal, versus real assets.
The guy from Able said that law is changing this year.
Oh, it
That
is.
it's not gonna revert to Medicaid.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
I don't know the details.
No,
but
John Finch is the able master. So if he said it, then
Because I mean, I was like, I'm not putting more money in the able account.
Right.
Worry
I don't
about
recommend it anyways, because the investments in the able account are not that great. Meaning they'll do something, but if you are doing your own investing, you're going to get much better structure and return out of what you're doing than an able account. Able account is really for people that you need to use it as a bank account, or if there was, like I said in the beginning, if there was only like $50,000 total, and it's like, well, why am I going to go spend $3,000 on a trust and all these things? I only have 50 grand. Let's just give them the 50 grand to spend, right? Then the able account makes sense because they're going to spend through it, and nothing's going to be left for the government still. Versus when there's a trust with $1 million, yeah, put $5,000 every 6 months in there for them to spend, and don't use it as a
trust will be
100%. Any other questions? Yes.
I had a question about, those of us who are already working with the CFP and managing an asset that we want to move into a trust, I hear your costs and they sound really reasonable compared to what.
Sure. Yeah, no, we're not crazy expensive.
So you don't then also take a percentage of the.
We will take a percentage of the assets that we manage. Our fees, we operate as a fiduciary. Our fees start at around 1% and go down based off asset size. And that would be separate, meaning when someone comes in to do a financial plan, we're not requiring them to give us their assets. We are happy to do an amazing job managing them, but ultimately we're never going to require that versus someone's comfort and they need it, and then we're absolutely there for them. Yep. Yep, we try to make it a la carte so no one feels like they're being forced where they don't want to be.
Sorry, last question for me. I'm in Orlando right now, but I live in Palm Beach County. So is it the service, if I team up with you and your team,
We're in Fort Lauderdale, but we operate with clients. I have clients that live in Orlando that just came to see me before the presentation. That like we've worked all over the state. I have clients in New York, California, Ohio. No. We do Zoom. Once Zoom became easy, it just like there was no issue with any of that. At least for our office, there wasn't. You had a question.
Yeah. So, getting started, we would just, if I was gonna get started with you guys, I would come to you. We set all the chess pieces, whatever, and then once you guys help the setup, then we'll go to a lawyer to get the trust set up.
Correct. We will help you determine a timeline for how to handle all this, and your preference is going to be in there. So if we're setting everything up and you're like, Craig, I can't sleep at night that I don't have a trust started, we'll make the introduction to the attorney and get that started while we're doing everything, as long as we know where the conversations are, so we can say like, all right, attorney's not going to finish drafting everything. They're going to start drafting, so by the time we're halfway down the racetrack, they can be halfway down the racetrack, and that's where client preference on how we operate, but we will set a parameter in the beginning of like how to go about it, because my father would always say with trust, if you create the trust and then go do the planning, you have to pay the attorney to edit the trust. If you do the planning and then craft the trust around it, you might be a little more cost efficient in your creation costs.
That's why I would make sure what would be the better route go.
Yeah, we're super flexible, so you can come to us at any time. Where the attorney, you really want to know certain details so that they can build out the legal document.
Yeah, because like establishing a will now, as my son got older, we want to make some changes. Now we have to go back.
Well, like people come to me, they don't even know who their guardian and trustee is going to be, and I'll help them figure that out. And then that way, when they go to the attorney, they can be efficient and cost, effective. Yep. Awesome. Any other question? Question.
So I'm not exactly sure where he was going with that, but as far as like, we already have an attorney and a special needs trust, but that's kind of it, and we do have some investments, but I don't know that that has anything to do with it.
We're going to do a big review of all the assets. We're going to have an attorney review the legal documents so we can give you a write-up of what's going on there. Or we can say, you know what, these documents were done in 2011. We got to have the healthcare surrogates inside them updated. They're out of date. Or whatever is things that need to be addressed, we're going to give you those notes. If it's perfect, we're going to be like, oh, we reviewed it. There's nothing to be done. Let's craft the assets and figure this out. But your legal document's in good shape. So we'll help you with that understanding for sure. Awesome. Well, that is it. And we already asked all the questions.
Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. You can hand back the forms to Coley as you leave, and we will certainly, like I said, reach out to anyone that hands in a form to set up a free consultation to answer questions and go a little more personal for you.